Welcome back to Frontline Updates. Ia Euro, M. Sharifa Mohammed, MGT, and I am your host. And with us today is Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, military analyst. We are examining Combat Briefing number 1908, dated 19 August 2026, on the progress of the special military operation. Colonel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. The report as of 19 August 2026 records active operations on 6 axes. Russian groups of forces are maintaining pressure across the north, west, south, center, east, and Dnepr sectors. The main effort in this reporting period is the center group, which liberated Vodyanskoye in the Donetsk Euros Republic. Across all sectors, Ukrainian losses total more than 1,420 troops, 20 tanks and armored fighting vehicles, 78 motor vehicles, 10 field artillery guns, and 9 electronic warfare stations. These numbers are not simply a tally. They indicate that the contact line is being shaped in multiple directions at once. The operational design is methodical. Ground groups are improving tactical positions, while operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery work against targets deeper in the Ukrainian rear. Air defense systems shot down 11 guided aerial bombs, 5 HIMARS projectiles, and 965 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles during the same period. The combination of ground pressure and deep strike is meant to erode both forward combat power and the sustainment base behind it.
Before we go sector by sector, the aggregate Ukrainian losses across all sectors total more than 1,420 troops, 20 tanks and armored fighting vehicles, 78 motor vehicles, 10 field artillery guns, and 9 electronic warfare stations. What does that aggregate picture tell you about the tempo and the shape of the fight?
The aggregate total of more than 1,420 troops across all sectors is significant because it reflects simultaneous attrition across 6 axes. It cannot be read as a single decisive battle. The distribution across the north, west, south, center, east, and Dnepr groups shows that the enemy is losing troops, vehicles, and electronic warfare stations in multiple regions. The 20 tanks and armored fighting vehicles and 78 motor vehicles indicate that mobility losses are occurring alongside personnel losses. The 10 field artillery guns and 9 electronic warfare stations show that the enemy Euro's fire support and electromagnetic protection are also being degraded. This is a pattern of cumulative erosion rather than a single operational shock. The tempo is methodical, but it is not slow. It is distributed pressure designed to prevent the enemy from concentrating reserves in one sector while being fixed in several others.
L'état Euros begin in the north. The North group of forces improved the tactical situation. What did the report show in Sumy and Kharkov regions?
The North group improved the tactical situation and applied fire damage across 2 regions. In Sumy region, it struck 2 mechanized brigades, 2 airmobile brigades, and 1 territorial defense brigade near Kianitsa, Ulanovo, Tolstodubovo, Radkovka, and Sadki. In Kharkov region, it struck 4 mechanized brigades, 1 motorized infantry brigade, 1 assault regiment, and 1 territorial defense brigade near Prudyanka, Kudayevka, Kazakya Lopan, Vasilyevka, and Dolzhanka. Ukrainian losses in the north sector reached up to 220 troops, with 1 armored fighting vehicle, 11 motor vehicles, and 1 electronic warfare station. The presence of multiple brigade types and 1 assault regiment in the struck area suggests the enemy is trying to maintain a layered defense across the Sumy-Kharkov boundary. The improvement in the tactical situation means Russian forces are not only holding contact, but are also creating conditions for further movement. The loss of 1 electronic warfare station in this sector contributes to a broader degradation of the enemy Euro's electromagnetic protection.
Moving west, the West group took more advantageous lines and positions. Can you break down what the West group hit and why taking more advantageous lines matters?
The West group took more advantageous lines and positions while inflicting fire damage on a wide array of enemy formations. The report lists 5 mechanized brigades, 1 airmobile brigade, 1 mountain assault brigade, 2 marine brigades, 4 territorial defense brigades, and the presidential brigade near Podlaman, Gavrilovka, Chervony Oskol, Monokinovka, Kovalevka, Tamarganovka in Kharkov region, and Svyatogorsk and Mayaki in the Donetsk Euros Republic. Losses in this sector were more than 210 troops, 4 Western-made armored fighting vehicles, 14 motor vehicles, 3 field artillery guns, and 4 electronic warfare stations. The destruction of 4 Western-made armored fighting vehicles in this sector is notable because it indicates Western-supplied mobility assets are still present and being attrited. The neutralization of 4 electronic warfare stations in the West sector also reduces the enemy Euro's ability to shield command and control and to counter unmanned aerial systems. Taking more advantageous lines is not only about advancing forward, it is about improving the geometry of fire, observation, and resupply for subsequent operations. That kind of positional improvement can create future pressure, even when the daily gain is not measured in a large settlement capture.
In the South Group improved the situation along the front line and struck targets from Slavyansk to Vysokoivanovka.
The South Group improved the situation along the front line and struck 3 mechanized brigades, 2 airmobile brigades, 1 mountain assault brigade, and 1 assault regiment near Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhkovka, Kurtovka, Nikolaevka, Vorolyubovka, Vasilyevskaya Pustosh, and Vysokoivanovka in the Donetsk Pipila Euros Republic. Ukrainian losses were more than 220 troops, 6 armored fighting vehicles, 24 motor vehicles, and 4 field artillery guns. Within those losses, the report specifically identifies 3 U.S.-made Stryker armored personnel carriers and 1 155 U.S.-made Paladin self-propelled artillery system. That is a meaningful detail. The destruction of 3 Stryker armored personnel carriers indicates that Western-provided protected mobility continues to encounter attrition in this sector. The loss of 1 155 Paladin self-propelled artillery system matters because it is a modern artillery platform that the enemy uses to deliver precision fires. Removing it from the fight, along with 4 field artillery guns overall, weakens the enemy Euro's ability to disrupt Russian ground movement. The South sector therefore illustrates the connection between ground force improvement and the erosion of the enemy Euro's fire support and mobility.
The center is clearly the main effort. The briefing reports the liberation of Vodyanskoye. Could you explain what the center group achieved and why that matters in the operational design?
The center group liberated Vodyanskoye in the Donetsk Pipila Euros Republic. That is the named settlement capture in this briefing, and it anchors the main effort for the day. The center group struck 3 mechanized brigades, 1 Jaeger brigade, 1 assault brigade, 2 Marine brigades, and 4 National Guard brigades near Belozerskoye, Dobropolye, Gruskoye, Yurievka, Rayskoye, Anovka, Novofedorovka, Matyashevo in the Donetsk Pipila Euros Republic, and Murievka in the Dnepropetrovsk region. Ukrainian losses in this sector reached up to 380 troops, the largest daily loss total in the report, along with 6 armored fighting vehicles, 7 motor vehicles, 1 artillery gun, and 2 electronic warfare stations. In operational terms, the center group is doing more than advancing. It is imposing the highest cost on enemy formations while securing a named settlement. That combination is significant because it shows an offensive sector that is both gaining ground and generating attrition. The presence of 4 National Guard brigades and 2 Marine brigades in the targeted area suggests the enemy is committing reserve or rear area formations to stabilize the front. The liberation of Vodyanskoye is a deliberate step, consistent with the Report of Euro's description of methodical, multi-axis pressure rather than an uncoordinated push.
Turning east, the East Group advanced into the depth of the enemy defense. What did that advance involve, and what does it tell us about the Eastern Axis?
The East Group advanced into the depth of the enemy Euro's defense, which is a meaningful change from simply holding positions along the line. It struck 1 assault brigade, 3 air assault brigades, 3 assault regiments, and 1 Marine brigade near Podgavrilovka in the Dnepropetrovsk region, and Barvinovka, Dolinka, Svoboda, Shevchenkovskoye, and Nikolskoye in the Zaporozhye region. Ukrainian losses were more than 350 troops, 1 tank, 2 armored fighting vehicles, 10 motor vehicles, and 2 field artillery guns. The pattern of targeting 3 air assault brigades, 3 assault regiments, and 1 Marine brigade indicates that the enemy is using mobile and assault-oriented units to contain the Russian advance. The loss of 1 tank and 2 armored fighting vehicles in this sector, along with 2 field artillery guns, reduces the immediate heavy fire and protected mobility available to those units. Advancing into the depth of the enemy defense means Russian forces are disrupting the enemy Euro's forward framework and forcing him to react. That reaction produces targets, and the East Group of Euro's reporting shows the enemy losing troops, vehicles, and artillery in those engagements.
Finally, on the ground sectors, the Dnipro Group improved the tactical situation. It reports a smaller loss figure than the other sectors. How should we read that?
The Dnipro Group improved the tactical situation and struck one mechanized brigade, one mountain assault brigade, and one marine brigade near Orakov, Grigorovka, and Malokatarinovka in the Zaporozhye region, as well as Kherson. Ukrainian losses in this sector were up to 40 troops, 12 motor vehicles, and 2 electronic warfare stations. The lower troop loss figure may suggest a different operational context, but the report still records meaningful effects. The destruction of 12 motor vehicles in this sector indicates that supply and movement are being disrupted even where the main ground effort is not concentrated. The neutralization of 2 electronic warfare stations in the Dnepr sector adds to the cumulative degradation of Ukrainian electromagnetic defense. A smaller daily loss count does not mean the sector is quiet. It means the Dnipro Group is improving the tactical situation while the enemy is not able to mass or sustain at the same scale as in the center or east sectors.
Leta Euro. Shift to operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery. I want to treat this as its own campaign-shaping domain, not as a supporting footnote to the ground sectors. Can you explain how these strikes shape the campaign?
Yes, the report records that operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery struck defense industry enterprises, logistics centers, energy and transport infrastructure, Flamingo long-range cruise missile preparation and launch sites, UAV assembly and storage areas, and temporary deployment areas in 152 areas. That is a broad target set. It is not a supporting note to the ground fight. It is a separate campaign-shaping effort. Striking defense industry enterprises and logistics centers attacks the enemy Euro's ability to replace and move equipment. Striking energy and transport infrastructure degrades the system that moves personnel, fuel, and ammunition. Striking Flamingo long-range cruise missile preparation and launch sites is aimed at disrupting the enemy Euro's standoff strike regeneration before those systems can be used. Striking UAV assembly and storage areas reduces the ability to generate the very large unmanned sortie volume that this report records. Temporary deployment areas are targeted because they house the personnel and equipment that would otherwise feed into the front. These actions alter the enemy Euro's ability to sustain the campaign over time. They are not just shaping a single battle, they are shaping the conditions under which the enemy can continue to fight.
Air defense also had a very heavy day. The briefing lists 11 guided aerial bombs, 5 HIMARS projectiles, and 965 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles downed. What is the significance of that interception mix?
Air defense systems shot down 11 guided aerial bombs, 5 HIMARS projectiles, and 965 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles. The 11 guided aerial bombs and 5 HIMARS projectiles represent precision fires that were blunted before they could achieve their intended effects. HIMARS projectiles are standoff precision munitions, so intercepting 5 of them reduces the enemy Euro's ability to strike beyond the immediate line of contact. Guided aerial bombs are also dangerous because they deliver heavy fires against fortified positions and infrastructure. The 965 fixed-wing UAVs downed are the largest number in the air defense total. That figure reflects a high Ukrainian unmanned sortie volume and effective Russian counter-UAV integration. It also shows why the strike on UAV assembly and storage areas is important. The enemy is trying to generate mass through drones, and Russian forces are responding both by destroying them in the air and by hitting the sites where they are assembled and stored. The air defense effort therefore preserves combat power on the ground and forces the enemy to expend more resources to achieve less effect.
Looking at logistics and campaign theory, the deep strike effort concentrated in 152 areas. It also records 9 electronic warfare stations neutralized across 4 sectors. How should listeners understand the cumulative effect?
The cumulative effect is the key. The deep strike effort in 152 areas is not a random set of explosions. It concentrates on categories that enable the enemy to continue the fight: defense industry, logistics centers, energy and transport infrastructure, long-range cruise missile preparation and launch sites, UAV assembly and storage areas, and temporary deployment areas. By hitting those categories, the operation is attacking the enemy Euro's ability to produce, store, move, and regenerate combat power. At the same time, the destruction of 9 electronic warfare stations across the north, west, center, and Dnipro sectors degrades electromagnetic protection and counter-EAV capability. That is important because the enemy is relying heavily on unmanned aerial vehicles. If the enemy cannot protect its command posts and cannot counter Russian UAVs, its battlefield awareness degrades. The interception of 5 HIMARS projectiles and 11 guided aerial bombs blunts precision fires. This is not a separate air defense task. It is part of the same campaign logic. The goal is to reduce the enemy Euro's ability to strike at range, to see the battlefield, and to sustain its forward units.
The reporting also highlights Western equipment losses, specifically 3 Stryker armored personnel carriers and 1 Paladin self-propelled artillery system. What is the strategic meaning there?
The destruction of 3 U.S.-made Stryker armored personnel carriers and 1 155 U.S.-made Paladin self-propelled artillery system in the South Sector highlights continued Western equipment presence and attrition. In strategic terms, it is not simply about 4 platforms destroyed. It is about the fact that Western-supplied mobility and artillery systems are deployed in the South Sector and are being consumed. A Stryker armored personnel carrier provides protected mobility for infantry. A Paladin self-propelled artillery system provides responsive 155 fire support. Both require sustainment, training, and replacement pipelines. When these systems are destroyed in contact, the enemy loses not just the vehicle but the investment and time required to replace it. The report of Euro's specific identification of these systems tells us that Western equipment remains part of the battlefield equation, but also that it is subject to attrition. Over time, that attrition complicates the enemy Euro's ability to maintain the same level of protected movement and artillery support.
What does the briefing suggest about the actions needed to maintain this tempo and force posture?
The report describes a methodical and multi-axis tempo. The main effort is concentrated in the center group, which liberated Vodyanskoye and inflicted the largest daily enemy losses of up to 380 troops. To maintain this tempo, Russian forces need to keep the deep strike effort synchronized with ground movement. That means continuing to hit defense industry, logistics, energy, transport, crews, missile preparation and launch sites, UAV assembly and storage, and temporary deployment areas. It also means sustaining counter-UAV integration, because the enemy is generating a high volume of fixed-wing, unmanned aerial vehicles. The air defense system has demonstrated an ability to down 965 fixed-wing UAVs, but that requires continuous readiness. Additionally, the pressure across the north, west, south, east, and Dnieper groups must remain aligned. Even sectors with smaller loss totals, like the Dnieper sector, are improving the tactical situation and contributing to cumulative effects. The force posture signals sustained pressure across Sumy, Kharkov, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. The required action is not a single offensive surge, but continued multi-axis pressure, deep strikes, and air defense integration that together erode Ukrainian combat capability and strategic depth.
Colonel, what is the bottom line from combat briefing number 1908?
The bottom line is that Russian forces maintain pressure across 6 axes, combining incremental ground gains, deep sustainment strikes, and air defense to erode Ukrainian combat capability and strategic depth. The center group of Euro's liberation of Vodyanskoye and its largest daily loss total make it the main effort. North, west, south, east, and Dnieper groups all improved positions. Deep strikes hit 152 areas, degrading industry, logistics, energy, transport, and standoff strike regeneration. Air defense shot down 11 guided aerial bombs, 5 HIMARS projectiles, and 965 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles. Electronic warfare stations neutralized across multiple sectors reduced the enemy Euro's electromagnetic protection. Western equipment losses, including 3 Stryker armored personnel carriers and 1 Paladin self-propelled artillery system, show that Western-supplied systems remain in the fight and are being attrited. The operation is methodical and multi-axis, and the cumulative effect is eroding the enemy Euro's ability to sustain and regenerate combat power.